My name is Harrison Wheeler, and you're listening to Technically Speaking. My next guest is Ron Bronson. We talk about consequence design. He says all design interactions have consequences, whether it's someone getting stuck buying a train ticket from a kiosk, hidden menus inside of web applications, or card-only convenience stores. In an always-on world, an increased constellation of digital tools can bring both significant benefits, but also harm with every notification, menu, or poorly researched interaction.
Like, we've gone to the world where if you don't give a thing 5 stars, it's bad. And like, what is a rating system if I can't give you a 4? You know, or God forbid I got to give you a 2 because it was just a bad experience. And I need you to know that. I don't want anybody to get fired over it.
It's been a while. The last time we ran across each other, I think, was probably, is that like 13 years ago? It feels like forever. It's probably
crazy.
Not that long ago.
It was, no, it wasn't 13, but it was like 20, it had to be somewhere between 2014, 2015.
2014.
2014, it got it the latest. It couldn't have been later.
It was the latest because I was still in Iowa, right?
Yeah, you were still in Iowa, yeah.
I think it was actually probably 2013.
Yep, that sounds right then. Yep.
So 7 years ago.
That's crazy.
But with this all shelter in place thing, it feels like 10 years ago, right? Because we've already gone through half a year.
Yeah, it's been already been a couple of years just in this year. No kidding.
Yeah, man. So tell me about your journey. What has it been like so far? Because where were you living back then? I know you were in higher education.
But I was probably in Wyoming. If you were in Iowa, I was in Wyoming.
Wow.
So, which I know anybody listening to this is go, wait, you got 2 brothers on the call. One lived in Iowa and the other guy's in Wyoming. What kind of lives were y'all living? Like, look, the grind takes you places, people. The grind takes you places. Okay?
100%.
You gotta go. You gotta go. Get that money, get that experience, and then you can live wherever you want to live.
100%.
After that, and that's what I had to do, and I don't regret it because if I hadn't done it, y'all wouldn't be talking to me.
Right.
But it was funny to think about. So yeah, I was there and I was working in higher ed, and then I worked in higher ed for 2 more years, really more like a year, and then switched over to sort of I was in higher ed, but it was like a quasi governmental organization, so it's the system level higher ed, so it wasn't on a campus. And then from there, after about a year and a half of being independent, I went to local government, which is actually pretty cool because it gave me the opportunity to. I tell people all the time, the cool thing about working in tech, sure, like on the web, if you're working in IT and local government, probably not as fun for people like us, but working on the web in local government was fun because, and obviously it was Bloomington, Indiana. So, Big 10 town, it's not New York City. But the beauty of what I liked about that though, was that in this stage of my career, what was cool about it was like, people have problems with things on the website or something like that. They come right to you and be like, hey, that thing didn't work. Or you go to a party with your friends and they be like, hey, my friend said you do this website for the city. I was on this page and I couldn't find this one link. And I'm like, this is amazing user research. You get all this user feedback. Like you could go to parties and show people websites. You're like, hey, we're doing this demo. You want to look at it? And some people will be annoyed by that, but I loved it. I thought that was such a cool way to, like, I really have always wanted the web to be more retail, to be not retail in a consumer way, but more of like, I want people to be able to know that this stuff is made for you. You have access, you have input, and we want that input. We want that you have that access. And so having that,
there's something novel to the idea that like a digital experience can be personified in an actual person, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So so that was really cool. And now, now I'm working at scale. It went from local government to sort of the big house. Can't talk about that, but y'all can Google it if you want to. Where I currently ply my trade day to day, and that's also cool for different reasons. But also some similar ones. Yeah.
Right. So in terms of that journey, obviously it's led you into sort of many different pathways. One of the things that we were talking about, and that you've actually talked quite a bit about, is this concept of consequence design. And before we at least get into that, like, what are some of the themes early on that helped to develop, moving in this direction?
So you've been around a while, so you've seen the evolution, which I appreciate. You've seen me start off and kind of be this proto conversation, and it's evolved this thing where I'm like, oh, these all tie together. So in the old days, it was even before I started talking about dark patterns, which, we
Right.
anti-patterns, UX anti-patterns. Before I even got there, it started with me thinking about service experiences and service design experiences. And so thinking about things like watching people using like Chicago, there's the L and you have those kiosks that folks use to, that's actually where it started. The first time I really ever thought about this for real was watching folks. I got this train, I had to go take the train somewhere, and I was in the train station for hours because I missed my train or something. I spent like 4 hours watching people navigate this kiosk to buy a
Mm.
ticket. And it was miserable watching folks, like old people, young people. I had a problem with it. At one point, I went to go mess with it. I didn't even need a ticket because I already had a ticket. But I wanted to play with this
Right.
thing just to see what they were experiencing because I thought it can't be that hard. And turns out it was miserable. And I started seeing this across the board with these kinds of experiences. And that led me towards thinking more about user interface, UI dark patterns and UI anti patterns, and
Mhm.
looking at the ways that we create deception on the web and how designers are complicit
Mhm.
with, either directly or indirectly with the kinds of you know creating deception, to try to deceive people to keep them on your app or your tool or your website or whatever else, or using language to do the same thing. And
I'm looking at you, New York Times.
right, right. Yeah, I mean, it's just and exactly. It's the worst offenders are sites like, like they're biggest sites in the
Yeah.
world. They're the worst offenders of this, and
Yeah.
and maybe they can justify it, but I don't know that you can. I don't, in a world where it's hard to explain, can you? And so from there,
Right.
it started thinking about how do we, and you start thinking about hostility, and so I started framing it in that
Right.
context of like
Mm.
how it's not so much about trying to make people feel bad about the work they do, but I think it's the problem that made me mad is hearing about empathy. I was like, oh, I want to empathize with the user. And I'm like, look at who's designing the tools and the applications. How are you going to empathize with me? You don't empathize with me on a normal day. How are you going to empathize with me? You're building a tool. I don't believe you.
Right.
You need more people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that was where I started to think this is the wrong framing. Or other folks who write books about this stuff and say, oh, what we really need is just we need a code of ethics, like doctors have. And I'm like, yeah, the thing that design needs is a damn bar association. That's going to make design way better. Is a damn bar association. So anyway, all that to say, thinking about all those pieces of it made me think they're all connected. This hostility is
Yeah.
designed in actual experiences. It's designed online,
Mhm.
and so how do you put it all together, and what is it? And so that led me to sort of
Mhm.
this thing I'm still slowly writing a book on consequence design, which I think I don't have a definition, so don't ask me, don't put me on the spot and ask me for a definition because I don't have a succinct definition yet. But I will say that
Yeah.
basically it's thinking about the ideal state of what you're designing,
Yep.
and then working backwards to all the consequences embedded in that, you know? And I
Right.
think that so then it takes it away from, oh, well, I can't do that. My role is an empower to fix that. It's not my job. It's not my job. Okay, it's not your job, but what is your job? What can you affect?
Yeah.
What can you impact? What can you map? What can you design
Right.
to affect the conversation in a way, right?
Right. I'd love to, we don't have to get into the definition, but are there any sort of experiences that make the all-star Hall of Fame of those violators, for you?
Well, I mean, GoDaddy's an easy one because if anybody's ever bought a domain on GoDaddy, I haven't recently, but in the old days I did. It was cheap. Really
Yeah.
good promo codes you get. It was
Yep.
awful because there's this situation where you buy the domain and then there's all these modals that come up, and then to the pages that you don't have any chance
Mm.
to try to deactivate or change things, or it tries to get you to buy stuff that you don't really want.
Yep.
Lots of trickery. There are lots of others that I'm not blanking on right now because I don't ever like to call anybody out because I feel bad.
Yeah.
But
I've been seeing a lot of, and this is like a new trend as of late. But if I don't sign up for your
oh yes,
newsletter, they send me these like, oh,
mm,
you don't want to sign up for your
mhm.
newsletter, so your life is gonna suck. And I'm like, yo, why are you coming at me like
Right,
that?
right. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, yeah. Lots of those newsletters, or yeah, that's actually a good article about this in one of these independent magazines that did a whole story on the guilt
Yeah.
trips that people are putting in their
Mm,
content now to try to make you feel
yeah.
bad about not subscribing or paying for their service, or my
Right.
personal favorite, apps that ask you to you've been in the app for 2 minutes and is asking you to
Yeah.
give it 5 stars. Also, sort of
Mm,
the beat of that is 5-star ratings at all. Like, we've gone to the
right.
world where if you don't give a thing 5 stars, it's bad. And like, what is the
Right.
rating system if I can't give you a 4? You know, or God
Mm,
forbid I got to give you a 2
yeah.
because it was just a bad experience. And I need you to know that I don't want anybody to get fired over it.
Right.
And that's the thing too. Is like I don't even rate. Like, I learned a long time ago. Like, I don't even use Yelp, but like with like a Uber
Yeah.
or Lyft, whenever I have to use them, which I don't try not to. But if I have to, I don't ever want to, unless it's a really truly bad experience. I don't want somebody to lose
Right.
their job over a misunderstanding or because something
Mm,
happened. So I can't even objectively rate people. You know, not that I even
right.
want to.
So
Go
the
ahead.
the system is pretty much broken enough where the some of the consequences can cost people's jobs, but it's to the point now, and this is kind of like what I take away
Mhm.
from it, right? Like these have almost become like design
Yep.
patterns, right? It's like you build an
Yep.
app and you need to make sure that there is a 5-star rating that happens after every single ride, or if you've used it for a couple of days, you pop it up so you can actually get more reviews. um Man, that's really, yeah. I mean, I don't think I've ever thought about that it has human consequences
It's
to that
designed
end.
to take your mind off of that. You're not supposed to think of it as a
Right.
person. This thing is, oh, we're not,
Mm,
you're supposed to take your mind off the actual individual, focus on the experience
right.
and the service. And so I used to
Mm,
asking the question this whole year. I'm like, what do these things look like in a world where in a post-service design
right.
world, what do these things look like?
Right.
And I don't know that we have answers because we're not thinking about it in that context. We're still trying to
Right.
treat it. We've created this extra sort of UI layer on experiences from
Right.
the 80s. We're just living in the
Right.
80s, but we've built a
Yeah.
UI layer on top of all of it. And
Right.
what does that
Right.
look like? We're not truly building sort of frictionless experiences.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so if you were to like take an inventory on experiences today, is there anyone that is doing is doing a good job in their experiences that don't result in these sort of uh these dire consequences?
Instead of naming an individual or a thing, what I'll say is the experiences that I feel like that do this well utilize friction as a consumer as advocacy for the consumer rather than using friction as a way to trap you. Because people, when
Mm,
I've given versions of this talk, and people always ask me, well, how do I differentiate between like good friction and bad friction? And I'm like, good friction is friction where I don't want you in my bank account. We cool, but like you don't need to be in there. You'd be mad anyway. But that's good
right.
friction. Bad friction is the kind of friction where I'm like, look, I want to unsubscribe from your podcast. Like, this is cool, but I don't need any more emails. Not your podcast. It's dope. But some other podcast, I'm done with that, or a newsletter or something else. Like, I'm done. The
Right.
experience, we're not great at closing the loop of the experience. It's saying
Mm,
like it's just a hilarious way to put this, but it's like being in a relationship and then both of y'all deciding, it's just not a good fit, but let's be friends, maybe, right? And we don't
right.
have that kind of experience in service design at all, right? It's either you're in
Right.
the funnel and you're like, what happens when you die? What, my kids got to stay
Right.
in the funnel now because I died and because I use this toothpaste, they got to use it too? No, I
Right.
bought your thing one time. Why do I need to get a lifelong commitment to emails from you because I bought one thing from you one time? But
Right.
we don't. So I think in a world where you create that kind of humane experience, and there are people who are thinking about
Yeah.
this intentionally, those are the kinds of experiences that I feel like respect the user, respect the individual, to respect the customer, respect for people.
So with that being said, what are maybe some three things that designers can do to at least add that perspective to the work that they're doing today?
Well, I think the first thing is you can is consequence mapping. So really taking stock of the different kinds of intended or unintended consequences from your tool, platform, app, site, experience. The beauty of this is this applies to any experience. Is like even if it's something like something very simple, like, oh, we didn't mean for that to happen, or, well, okay, we'll write it down, because that doesn't mean you're going to solve for all of these things, but being able to map
Right.
these experiences, give you consequences, give you the opportunity to start to interrogate each one of them to figure out the
Mm,
feasibility of fixing it, to figure out why that's there. Maybe that's friction supposed to be there. Maybe we want people to have this barrier because it's for this reason or that reason, but we need to know. And right now we can't audit those things. So maybe less mapping and more auditing. I think the second thing is thinking about sort of sort of in a similar vein, thinking about threat modeling, there's some really good things online about taking threat modeling and applying that to tools and platforms as well, and figuring out again kind of where are the kinds of things we're not. There's a cool person online that has this tweet that's something along the lines of like, if your app has a chat or any kind of email component to it, it's automatically a dating app. And I'm like, because people don't think of these things that like,
Wow.
anything, LinkedIn, whether it's Instagram,
Mm,
whatever it is, folks are going to slide it. We've joked about it. We joke about it in a really casual way, but think about the horror involved in being be approached by people that are not supposed to be reaching out to you, or not using this
right.
thing for this intended purpose. And so
Mm,
again, threat modeling, thinking about what are the kinds of ways folks will disabuse what we're trying to do. And the last one is sort of one of the easier ones. I put that in quotation marks. Is using a designated dissenter on teams. Is having a person when you're working in agile situations, or if you're doing sort of in group settings, having a person on the team whose job it is to just be like, but and not to be in sort of a. The reason you change this, you share this hat is because of somebody who's just naysayers. We don't like them because they're on Twitter. Don't be a reply guy. It's not designated reply guy. It's designated dissenter. And the idea is to break down sort of the conventional assumptions organizationally, not individual assumptions about whatever it is we're building, so that we can dig further into, okay, but what about this? I'm going to use it like this. I'm going to do that. And by using those different frames, once you go around the room with those kinds of frames at different times, it gives you the ability, A, to see how the folks think about things, but also different ways that different people might think to use or disuse whatever it is that you're
mm,
designing or building. So
fascinating. Dope, man. So you mentioned that you're going to be speaking on this soon, and you're writing a book. Give us an idea of some of the upcoming events that you'll be speaking at.
well, the only thanks to COVID, there's not a whole lot of there's nothing in person. But the most recent next thing online is I'm doing an event apart. Is doing an online event next month, but around human centered design, and I've been very grateful for the opportunity to talk about consequence design. Actually, for the first time, we're going to talk about this with
Yeah.
this title. I think July 20th, I believe it's online, and you can learn more about that. The book won't be out till next year at least, so don't pressure me. Actually, you should pressure me if you see me online.
You
Anyone
said it
online should
here.
totally just be like, "Hey, Ron, how's that book coming along?" Whenever you talk to me, because that's what you need to do. Because I need that kind of motivation right now. But
Yeah. What's your Twitter account?
at, I am at Ron Bronson on Twitter.
Slide into those DMs for Ron.
You can totally do that about the book.
Is there anything else you'd want to leave with the listeners today?
Nah, I appreciate this and appreciate you. This is really great and super, super awesome. Keep doing good work out there.